Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your hosts,
John
and CC. And this is the show where we talk about anime of seasons past we did and didn't watch to conclusion. So let's start today's episode with a mix of both, because I watched all of the next series from beginning to end, but wish I hadn't. And all I can do now is tear at a new one while shoving it deep into our trash stash. So in the trash stash today, we got, drumroll, Dimension W, which is gonna be our first full series trash stash review. So far we've only put shows in here we started but didn't finish for one reason or another, but this is the first show I deliberately put in here because I watched all of it and it's fucking garbage.
Well, at least we have another show coming up later on that I watched beginning to end, and we're going to be trash stashing for certain.
Oh yeah, which I found out. Oh no, we can talk about that when we get to that actual show. But
that's spoilers for a future podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Let's refrain from doing that and get to the garbage show of the day. Which is, like I said, Dimension W, which might be a bit of a surprise for people who have been following us from episode 1, because Dimension W was one of my sneak peek highlights from last season, if you listeners will remember. The first episode was really promising, and I guess it just goes to show how the winds can change. Also, if this review sounds a bit fractured, please bear with me, because making sense of this clusterfuck of a show is not a simple task. And believe me, it was much worse watching it for 12 episodes than listening to it. So, anyway. Let's get the basic story setup out of the way first, for people who don't know anything about this. So it's the not too distant future, a big favorite among anime settings, I guess. Humanity has apparently solved the energy crisis, and they did that by inventing the devices that can harness the power of a recently discovered fourth dimension called Dimension W. Why Dimension W? Because you already got the X, Y, and Z axis who built our three dimensions, so W has to be the fourth, obviously.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. So in this world, a mega corporation called New Tesla quickly takes over the production of the devices needed to tap into this new dimension, called coils. And because coils quickly become part of everyday life, because they're the new energy source, and New Tesla has the monopoly on their production, they gain enormous social economic power. There's just this giant corporation controlling everything, basically. They also criminalize coils that are not licensed or produced by them, and use so-called collectors, think like bounty hunters, to hunt the illegal coils and their owners down. Get back the coils and kill the owners, basically. Or beat them up. I don't know if they have to kill them, if that's in the contract, but they at least have to get the coils back. And that's where our main character, Kyoma Mabuchi, comes in. He is a collector who hates coils, weirdly enough, for some reason. We don't know why yet in the first episode. That's only revealed much later in the story, but that's what he is. He's basically living it old school. He's driving this old car that still runs on gasoline, and he isn't living in one of them fancy coal-powered houses and stuff. So yeah, that's him. And he's basically this gruff older anime guy archetype. I don't know. Think of Jet from Cowboy Bebop, maybe, or Mugen from Samurai Champloo. He's very reminiscent of that character, kind of. On one of his jobs, he runs into the young robot girl, Mira Yurizaki, who was apparently created by the inventor of the coils, Shindo Yurizaki, who went rogue after New Tesla killed his wife and a child for some unexplained reasons. This is, by the way, never brought up again later in the series, if I remember correctly, so it's pointless. A running theme in this review, as you will notice.
Jeez. We're off on the great foot already.
Yeah, I mean, that might be because the manga is still running and the New Tesla plotline only comes in later in the story, but in the anime it isn't brought up again, so whatever. Anyway,
it's not brought up again yet.
Yeah. Oh, do you want a second season, John?
I don't know. It sounds like you do.
No. Back to the story setup. So, the creator Shindo Yurizaki blows himself up when new Tesla gets too close to him and Mira, so they can't get to her through him. And Mira asks Xioma if she can become his partner and help him hunt down illegal coils. So yeah, that's the basic setup. And we get introduced to a bunch of characters and story points later on. Yeah, before we get to the teardown, let's talk a bit about what works. It's not much, but there are like a few things here and there. So the animation in the beginning of the show is good. I really liked it. It's one of the things that drew me to the show in the beginning. The show is produced by Studio 3 Hertz, whose only other show so far is Celestial Method, I think, which I haven't seen, so I can't say anything about that. But at least
I think I know the name, but not the show.
Yeah. Me neither. So, but at least in the first few, like in the first half of the show, they do good work just in terms of animation production. This might be helped by the fact that this show is co-funded by Funimation, which makes sense since the designs and story setup have a lot of appeal for Western anime fans. I guess it's like one of those settings that just works for a Western audience. The character designs are also nice and clear cut. At least the main characters. Really almost all of the characters, except for some glaring few examples. Yeah, everything is really colorful, really crisp looking. In the beginning, you have like this nice mix of modern cities with urban landscapes. Also reminds you a bit of Cowboy Bebop. And yeah, it gets worse and worse after the halfway point of the show. Like the budget drops and the animation becomes more stilted and everything like that. So yeah, sad to say, but at least in the beginning, it's nice to at least look at it. What's also great is the opening and ending theme. I really like them. Opening by Stereo Dive Foundation, who have already made the stellar opening to Gangsta, which was one of my favorites in one of the previous seasons. So yeah, nice things. And those are probably the only nice things I can talk about.
Oops.
Oops. So let's get to what went wrong. Let's start with the characters, shall we? So Kyoma Mabuchi is an incredibly boring main character. He is an asshole to Mira pretty much the entire time. He is constantly calling her Ponkotsu, which means heap of junk or something like that, along those lines. That's like his catchphrase for her, his catchword. He's also always calling her that. And he doesn't change that, like, until the very end, and not like in a huge way or something. You always expect him to build like this interesting relationship over time, like, become friends, become partners, rely on each other, save each other constantly. And some of that happens, but not to an extent where I would say, yeah, now these guys have a working, cool relationship or something interesting or lovely or fun to look at or endearing. No, nothing like that happens. He pretty much stays an asshole until the end, and yeah, is thus not an engaging character, and not fun to listen to, not fun to see do his shit. And yeah, the show also makes a mystery out of why he hates coils and keeps it around way too long. That mystery that is. Plus, when it's finally revealed, it's one of the most cliched reasons you can think of. Also a running theme in the show. Also, for anyone who for some reason still wants to watch this, I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this show, so just be wary of that. I'm not. That show doesn't deserve me holding back on that. So.
Oh no, I guess that means I need to leave the discussion too, because I want to watch this show, eh?
I don't
Just
believe
kidding.
you. So it turns out his fiance, who was dying of anime girlfriend disease, got blown up by a coil during an operation to save her life and transfer her consciousness into a new robotic body. That body, you guessed it, was given to Mira, which is why her appearance irritates Kyoma so much, since she reminds him of his deceased wife. This, like many other plot points, is thrown at us in a hurry to make us care about the character, but it doesn't work because aside from giving him a sobby backstory, it's never really the basis for any solid character development. Because he doesn't, really get over the fact in an interesting way, or, work this shit out with Mira. Yeah, that's irritating. Speaking of underdeveloped characters, Mira is not getting any character development whatsoever. Throughout the whole show, she's portrayed like this naive young girl who is only trying to be accepted by Kyoma. tolerating any kind of shit he's throwing away, and that was really frustrating for me. He's like, "Girl, speak up for fuck's sake, or punch him or something. He's an asshole to you the entire time. I don't get it. What the fuck?"
Jeez.
Incredibly frustrating. And by the end, when he has a character crisis moment, she tells him like to man up so he can defeat the big bad, and that's basically it. She's boring, and it seems they put more effort into all of the ham-fisted fan service shots of her tits and ass instead of, giving her any kind of interesting character story. There might be, like I said, some later in the manga when, we get back to maybe her origin story in relation to New Tesla and whatsoever. But at the moment, it's boring. she's an underdeveloped character. Then let's already go there. We got the main villain of the show by the name of Haruka Seameyer. Doesn't remind you that of
What?
Final Fantasy villain
Yeah, a little bit.
Seymour? He might as well be, because he's also wearing a stupid fucking coat. He's not only having a stupid name, he's also wearing a ridiculously dumb villain coat. Like, you see that thing on him and it's like, what the fuck? Isn't he supposed to be a scientist or something? He looks like, I don't know, yeah, Seymour or Kafka or something. He looks like a clown. It's hilarious. And that guy, he is only introduced in the 9th episode of 12. And he's like the walking, talking cliche of a mad scientist. So if the show wasn't already in a free fall before that, it definitely jumped off a cliff when he made his appearance. He's like responsible for a lot of bad things happening to characters in that show, but since he is such a hacky cliche, I could not take him seriously. Not at all. The last episode basically only consists of him cackling like a madman, yelling, "I will get you, Kyomo!" Ah! And when his plans are ruined, he just has a ginormous seizure and pretty much just yells, "Everything was pointless, pointless!" Like flailing with his arms, which is brilliantly sums up my feelings on the story of the show and makes for a good GIF, but not for a good villain. I'm sorry. But I love that GIF though, and I'm gonna use it as a teaser pic for this episode because it's fantastic. Anyway, yeah, shitty villain. His motivations are dumb. He was an employee of New Tesla and an apprentice of Shindo Yurizaki, who invented the coils and everything. Right? And yeah, but he wanted to do some dangerous experiment with the coils, and Yurizaki wouldn't let him, and then he went mad because of that, and yeah. Shit happened, accidents, because he is an asshole and killed pretty much everyone in the lab, and yeah. And thus he is the big bad of the show, but, a shitty one. A really, really shitty one. No interesting character development. Again, you can't take him seriously. He just plain sucks, and maybe for comedic relief, but even then, I don't know. Just sucks. Rolling further on with the pointless theme. The show loves throwing characters at the viewer that don't add anything substantial to the plot or bigger picture. There are like maybe 2 to 3 characters besides Kyoma and Mira that matter to the main plot, and yet we are introduced to a bunch of new characters in the second half of the series that are fucking pointless. Who would have
They're
thought?
just sort of there.
Yeah, they were there. They were like, oh yeah, okay, this could lead to something, and I guess he is in there to get the other characters to this certain point. Basically, they have to go to an island in the latter half of the series where the old lab where the color experiments were going on by Seameyer was stationed, and that giant accident happened that also caused memory loss on Kyoma. Convenient plot device, amnesia always is, to withhold some mysteries from the viewer and plot details. But yeah, they have to go there, and this new character is introduced called Prince Salva, who basically is the one getting most of the characters to that island. But beyond that, the show doesn't do anything interesting with him. Nothing at all. I don't know why he is there, what he's good for. He's just there to maybe spout some exposition here and there, and that's it. Boring as fuck. Lame character, lame background story, everything. So yeah, instead of giving us like a bunch of characters that don't matter to the story at all and that we will never care about, why not try to develop the few ones that are essential to the plot, like Hyoma and Mira, that we should care about, but don't because they're severely underdeveloped? I don't know. Yeah, one more thing. There's this kid character, which is basically the younger brother of Prince Salva, who is also thrown into the show later on, called Luwai. And he's built up like this character who might, cause Kyoma to change his attitude towards people or towards Coils and Mira, and maybe become like an emotional focal point later in the show because they form some kind of connection. You think like, oh, maybe he could become like a little brother character to Kyoma. And then he gets killed off.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, oh, hey, this could be a really cool emotional scene, depending on, how they depict Kyoma's reaction to this. And what do they do with it? Guess.
Is this the one where you told me where the death was incredibly just completely pointless?
Exactly. You guessed it, because that's a running theme with the show. It's fucking pointless. They do fucking nothing with it. Kyoma just rage vomits for a few seconds and annihilates the guy responsible for killing Luwai. And then it turns out Luwai is alive. He had multiple robotic bodies, which both he and the show neglected to tell us about. And at that point, something magical happened, and I could see a giant middle finger flashing on the screen, clearly directed my way, and I yelled out loud, "Fuck this, fuck you, fuck this show, and fuck me for watching it." And man, wow, I...
Aren't convenient plot contrivances just the best?
It's not even convenient, because it's like, it really comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't really do anything.
It's like, just one of those things that you're watching, you're like, well, that happened.
Yeah, exactly. They could have done something with it, like if you got a sincere emotional response from Kyoma that would have led to something, but it doesn't. Because A, Luwai isn't dead, and B, it doesn't change Kyoma's character, like, at all. So, fuck that, I guess. Pointless, again. So yeah, that's it for the characters in that show. And let's see what else went wrong. Direction. So the director, Kanta Kame, had, like, so far has more experience, or only experience, with slice of life stuff like Bunny Drop and Orishura. And it shows. I mean, I think he has also directed the Tales of Hesperia movie, which I haven't seen, and I don't know about the action scenes in that one. But the action in this show suffers greatly from, which I imagine is his lack of experience when it comes to the action genre. He likes to throw in these close-ups on character faces with a one-color background. I know if you've seen that stuff before in other shows, where like you see the character face and the background is like just a yellow cardboard, basically. Or stuff like that, right? And you see like one character head on the one side and one character head on the other side, just, and one color background, and then they're talking to each other. So that might be something that is more prominent or more oftenly used and more effectively used in slice of life stuff or comedy shows or something like that, to highlight a joke or something. I don't know, but it doesn't work in this. It doesn't work as a tool for action shots. What these shots do, these one color background shots, is they take out all the emotion and excitement out of an action scene. That happens constantly, and since this is detrimental, is that the right word? Yeah, it's really detrimental just to the overall flow of those action scenes and the episodes in general. Add to that some weird cuts and edits, and you get action scenes that feel uninspired and boring and just hacked up. It's it's just not fun to look at most of the time. That's a problem. The artwork is still good, but how it's put into motion, everything just falls flat in a lot of places, especially in the later parts of that show where the animation quality also drops significantly. It only gets worse. That's all I can say. So yeah, that's sad. Another thing that went wrong, just in terms of basic story development, the show, I already mentioned this before, the show tries to make its story more interesting by turning a lot of its plot points into mysteries, but instead of doing it in a halfway, decent, what could I compare it to? Lost. In a decent Lost-esque way, by giving you a bit of information with each new question, it just hogs the main mysteries until the end, and doesn't deliver on an exciting reveal. There's no competent build up. New mysterious plot points are brought up and get either dropped or just revealed later in a way that makes you think, yeah, of a wet prolonged fart noise or something. This is it's just you're sitting there and then you slouch more into your couch and you're like, that's lame. Like a bunch of plot points are thrown in that don't have any relation to the characters featured in that specific episode, and yeah, it's a mess. The mysteries surrounding the characters themselves are also either predictable, cliched, lame, make no sense, or just plain don't matter in the grand scheme of things. So it's just you constantly either questioning what's going on, because the show can be very obtuse at times and very bad at telling you stuff. There's a lot of exposition at certain points in that show, but that doesn't necessarily mean that things are explained well. And like, okay, this shit is happening, maybe, and we don't tell you exactly right now what this means, but maybe you can think of what it means. And then probably later it turns out it means something else entirely. Uh,
It's
yeah.
almost like it's saying, "Hey, use your imagination, kid."
Yeah. But doesn't work because it doesn't give you any good basis for, deducing what is going on.
Mm.
Because it's throwing so much stuff in there that it could mean anything. And that's also a good point. The last one I want to address before I end this, before I wrap up this tirade, and also speaking of mysteries that the show doesn't deliver on, is Dimension W itself. In the beginning, we don't really know what Dimension W is. We just know that the coils can produce energy by tapping into it. And then we learn that some of the coils, the so-called numbers, who are like these really strong coils, who apparently, as we later learn, I think were created by Seameyer, who tap into a deeper layer of Dimension W, cause some weird dimensional distortion effects when they explode. We see different symptoms of that, where people are like torn apart and put together in a weird mesh of flesh and machine again when they are hit by that explosion and stuff like that. And around episode 4 or 5, I think, we learned that Dimension W is actually a dimension of possibilities. And I'll try to
The
explain.
hell does that mean?
Yeah, I'll try to explain this. So at that point, all that means is alternate timelines. Dimension W is a collection of past, basically not taken, of decisions not made that lead to a different future. So if someone did something in our world, Dimension W maybe houses a version of him or her that at a specific time in his or her life decided to do something else. So it's a pretty neat sci-fi concept. But if you think my description of it sounds already too complicated or wishy-washy, the show does a much worse job at explaining to you what exactly Dimension W does.
It sounds like it's an interesting concept, but
Yeah.
I also wonder why it is they're siphoning off energy from basically a world that's their own, but not.
Yeah.
How does it affect that world then?
The technology behind the coils is also not really ever explained. So yeah, you got a good point there. It's like, yeah, they can do that for some reason because dimensional shift, energy, time, whatever. And
Because we said so.
We said
basically.
because the plot demands it. It only gets worse the longer the story progresses, because at this point it's like, hey, you got this neat sci-fi concept, let's see what they do with it. What they do with it is just suddenly
Nothing.
change everything. Suddenly Dimension W is also a world of dreams and memories, and the memories can make versions of characters from Dimension W real. And then the numbered coils can apparently extract souls from people because those are a thing now. And then characters enter each other's brains or souls or dreams by way of Dimension W. And then we get introduced to the MacGuffin of the show, the Genesis Coil, which is this big thing that Seameyer was working on, which basically can do anything the plot demands it to do because it's fucking techno magic. That's all it is. It's fucking magic. Like this.
So it's basically the Philosopher's Stone?
Yeah, kind of. The script, it can do anything basically, like connect people through beyond death and even if they died in the same world, it can teleport. It is like responsible for Kyoma getting out of the accident at the lab where he was part of a special soldier unit called Grendel that investigated like
Grendel.
yeah, he was a beast of Grendel. Is his name. They investigated the laboratory and the experiments by C. Meyer on this Easter Island, on the Easter Islands, and basically he went there. Shit happened. He destroyed he got the Genesis coil and got teleported out of the island and thus saved, but also had amnesia. Ridiculously convoluted stuff, totally unnecessary. And what this boils down to is the Genesis coil is fucking magic. It can do anything. The script tries to give it this pseudoscientific coat of paint, but it's all a bunch of technobabble jibber jabber, which doesn't amount to anything or make much sense in any way. So, yeah,
Pseudoscience, yeah.
at its worst, at its worst. So by the end, one of the central mysteries of the show, like the thing that we started out on, Dimension W, it's in the fucking title. Just basically results in the scriptwriter throwing his arms up and yelling, "I don't know, man, fucking dreamy soul magic and shit."
Yeah? See, we call that a Deus Ex Machina.
Oh yeah, horrible. And it's just throwing his arms in the air, throwing this pages of script in the air. It's like, fuck it. It's a horrible, horrible mess, and of course, pointless. You know, like I already mentioned several times. So, yeah, totally disappointing and unsatisfying. Yeah, the manga by Yuji Iwahara is still running, like I said, and I wonder if some of the story problems stem from, Studio 3 Hertz making up their own shit instead of following the source material. I haven't read the manga. I don't know. Don't know if it maybe goes into a better direction or doesn't change the idea of Dimension W from its initial sci-fi setup with the alternate timelines to, this weird soul magic bullshit. And like I said, I also don't know if we get a second season. Not that I want one after this debacle. But yeah, we'll see. I don't think I will check out the manga after this. I'm done with Dimension W, period, after this review. I don't want to see any more of it. And I I regret watching the show till the end. But I started, and at a certain point, I wanted to see how deep the shitty rabbit hole goes. Yeah.
It seems unfortunate because everyone who had started watching it seems to say, oh, this seems pretty promising. It seems pretty interesting. And it just sounds like it just flew violently off the rails and just decided, hey, see ya.
Yeah. Just not giving a fuck anymore.
And I mean, the manga has been running since, from what I can see here, 2011. So I would imagine over the course of 5 years, it would have, enough material to, not be so crazy unless that's really the way it goes. I don't know.
Exactly. That's why I'm wondering. Maybe I should investigate a bit and see if if things turn out differently in the manga than they do in the anime, because I can imagine why Studio 3 Hertz would like go a different way if they didn't have to. If there was enough material, usually shows refrain from doing their own ending and going their own story route in the adaptation. I can't say anything more than I've already talked about this piece of shit way too long. It's a shitty show. Stay clear to spare yourself from disappointment.
I'm looking at some of the credits here, and I figured I'd ask this real quick. How is the music in the show?
Decent, though just my overall bad experience with the show might have just made it hard for me to remember any memorable musical high note from a specific episode or something. But I don't remember the music to be, bad or bothersome.
Yeah, it's because I see Go Sheena's name on here, and from my experience, she's done a lot of great work. I mean, I hate, this is going off on a slight tangent, I hate Tales of Legendia. This is a terrible video game, but the music in it is fucking fantastic.
Oh yeah, I love that soundtrack. It's fantastic.
And I mean, she's done, all sorts of other stuff too. Some work on a little bit of Ace Combat, some Tekkens, some of the other Tales games, so she has a good pedigree to her name. So, if you could walk away from the show saying, hey, that music wasn't bad.
Yeah.
There's another good thing you can say.
Yeah. One more thing. Like, what does that make it? Like three? What did we have? Animation in the first half, or art design in the first half, opening and ending, and the music in the show. Okay, well,
There
I,
you go.
I
Boom.
guess that's something. We're ending on a high note, people.
It's less than nothing.
Anyway, let's get to a review that is hopefully a bit more positive than mine. And yeah, I'll leave that to you.
All right, so after that absolutely spectacular and wonderfully glowing review of Dimension W, I, I think I'm gonna stop this podcast right now and go watch it. I'm kidding, just kidding. So I watched a little show that covered a couple of seasons actually, something called Heavy Object. It's animated by JC Staff, who I their studio I like to make fun of a lot because sometimes their quality goes up and down, but usually they deliver on decent quality, so I guess I shouldn't be as hard on them as I am.
Mm.
What kind of caught me about this show is it was written by Kazuma Kamachi, who is also the writer of A Certain Magical Index and A Certain Scientific Railgun.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured, hey, I like rail decks. I want to see what Kamachi's got up his sleeve this time around.
So Heavy Object started out as a light novel as well.
Yes.
All right.
But it didn't fall into the trap of getting 13 episodes and then thrown to the side. It actually got 2 seasons.
Oh, okay.
It's directed by Takashi Watanabe, who, as far as I can tell, is one of JC Staff's in-house guys because he's done a lot of their shows like Hidan no Aria, Shakugan no Shana. But he's done other high-profile stuff, including but not limited to Boogie Pop Phantom, The Slayers, which I think might also be another JC Staff show, if memory serves. But he's worked on a lot of, big-name stuff that is readily recognizable and, as far as I can tell, pretty well received. We had like 4 people on the script for this show, which, may be good or bad depending on your point of view.
Well,
But
you tell me. How did it turn out?
I feel like it turned out decent, but the names you got on here are Hiroyuki Yoshino, Ichiro Okouchi, Katsuhiko Takayama, Masahiro Yokotani. And they've worked on, collectively, shows like Excel World, Code Geass.
Oh, that's a blast from the past.
I believe Code Geass R2 specifically.
Mm.
Guilty Crown, Free,
Mm-hmm.
Magi, The Kingdom and Labyrinth of Magic. Not
One of my favorites.
Not Sinbad. Kotetsujo no Kabaneri.
Mm-hmm.
Baka and Test. And there's a couple of black sheep on this list, like Alnoa Zero and Valve Rave. But there's a bunch of other good stuff on this list. We can push it aside. It's fine.
You could argue that Code Geass to a certain extent is already a black sheep, but still an entertaining one.
Yeah, on a quick tangent, I still feel like it's one of those shows that, for as goofy as it was, it's still delivered on its plot and concept and was at least fun to watch.
Yeah, for the most part, I just ridiculous plot developments aside, although they were part of the fun actually. So I really enjoyed Code Geass, even its kind of fragmented second season. So it's all in good fun, I guess.
Let's see here. The musicians who worked on the show were, also alumni of the past Index series and the movie. So there you go. Got a lot of the same cast and crew, which is cool. So anyway, as the story goes, it follows this young man, Quenther Barbotage.
Now, there's a name.
There's a lot of colorful names on the cast, and I'm gonna get to it, but there's also kind of a running theme with the main 4 characters. But yeah, Quenther works as, with this mobile maintenance battalion, and he's a trainee mechanic, and he's learning how to fix up and build these weapons called objects. What's an object, you say?
It's a
Well,
Technodrome.
you thought that about the baby Magnum when you saw it, yes.
Yeah,
But
obviously. It looks
but
like the fucking Technodrome, man.
a little bit. But I mean, objects come in all shapes and sizes, so the way the baby Magnum looks is not exclusive to how all objects look.
Yeah.
But objects serve the purpose of basically being these, giant mobile weapons that are used to fight proxy wars, as opposed to having infantry battles and whatnot.
Oh,
Oh, this
okay.
this one big kingdom's got a beef with another.
They pit their
Let
objects
let
against.
the objects duke it out.
So if your object like gets destroyed, you automatically lost the conflict and have to, I don't know, give up whatever land this conflict was about or something.
That's not really heavily elaborated on, but it's made clear that if you don't have an object that is in working order, then just good luck. Good luck.
You can basically be taken over,
Yes.
invaded, and everything. Okay,
I
occupied.
mean, another really as one strange plot contrivance about the show, which I don't remember if it was ever fully explored, but there's no like nations in the traditional sense. Like all of the countries of the world are like broken up in across these like various kingdoms that they're called, and it seems really weird and strange. But each kingdom has their own ideal that they're fighting for, which okay, fine, sure, but
Do we get the obligatory Nazi state?
no, no, we don't go quite that far.
Well, okay. Refraining from cliches. I like that.
But yeah, so Quenther is, this essentially kid. I think he's like 16 or 17. He's like, yeah, I want to learn how to build and repair objects. So he works in this battalion along with his friend Havia Winchell, who's
These names, man.
they're great.
I
They're
like him.
great.
I like him.
Um, Havia is another soldier. He's not really the tech savvy the way Quenther is. So, he's just out there with his gun, shooting when he needs to. But he also kind of has a cowardly streak about him. So Quenther has to really urge him to jump into action.
Mm.
So, Quenther acts as like a good motivator for his friend. And they end up getting each other into trouble on various occasions. But I really like the dynamic between them.
Is there
Because
like some cool banter sprinkled in between us two? Or
oh yeah, definitely. Just going back and forth like, you asshole, what the hell are you doing, sort of thing.
Nice.
They are commanded by this I guess we could just throw it out there, very well endowed, and they make you realize this lady named Froladia Capistrano.
God damn it. Well, I thought I couldn't get more ridiculous than the last one, but apparently I was wrong.
There's one more key main character too.
Okay. I'm,
But
I'm trembling in anticipation, John.
and I mean Froladia she's tough,
Hmm?
as you have to be in the military, but she understands that, she's always pretty much sending her soldiers out to their potential death. And I'll get to, more of that in a minute. But I guess I didn't really say yet that objects are usually piloted by like these quote unquote elite soldiers. I guess you could say they're like of high or noble birth. They don't really maybe they do in the novels, but they don't really go heavily into what makes some of the characters so noble. But
Oh, I was
anyway,
about to say, are they like just from I don't know, higher class family and are like groomed to be these perfect soldiers or something?
I mean, I'm assuming maybe, like I said, maybe that's more lined out in the light novel, but
Mm.
it is what it is. So the baby Magnum object is piloted by this young lady.
Here it comes.
named Melinda Brantini.
Oh well, that's kind of okay, I guess. That sounds not too outlandish, actually.
Now let's step back a second and look at their names and realize if there is a theme going through them. Barbotage, Windshell, Capistrano, Brantini. Do you see the thread yet?
No, I'm drawing a blank here. I was at first saying guns, but it doesn't make much sense. No, please enlighten me.
They're all alcoholic beverages.
Oh, gee, well that explains it. I I don't drink much alcohol, so
Well, I mean, when I was looking up details on their names, I didn't fully realize it either because their names also have other meanings as well, but that's the common thread between their names.
so is that just a fun jab by the author, or is there any meaning behind that?
I think it's just Kamachi having some fun with the
All
names.
right. I was about to say, is this whole show gonna be a metaphor for severe alcoholism or something? That would be super interesting.
I mean, after the shit that Quinther and Havia see, maybe
Okay, yeah, sure. PTSD. Why not?
the story, again deals with objects and then fighting proxy wars with them. But at one point, Ferladia commands Quenther and Havia, hey, do some recon on this enemy object and, report back what you can about it. And Quenther gets it in his head, every machine was built by a human, which means it could be taken down by a human.
Okay. So they what, like, go on foot and infiltrate the other objects or something?
Yeah, and he basically, since, like I said, he's a mechanic in training, he looks at, structural weaknesses of these machines, and they usually go through like a massive battle of trying to figure out what he can do to take down these machines, whether it be climbing all throughout or in it, or just planting explosives, exploiting, like uh, there is one early on where he basically just delivers a massive electric shock to it and it just shuts the whole machine down.
Well, yeah, that
It's,
makes sense, kind of.
well, I mean, yes, but against some other machines, they might be more well insulated against an attack like that.
So where he
Uh,
maybe just blows out the joints on a specific point of the, I don't know, of the transportation of the wheels or something, and it just can't move anymore or stuff like that.
yeah,
All
like I
right.
said, it could be pretty much whatever structural weakness he can find.
How many objects do they fight in the course of the show? How many different ones?
There's one point where I'm trying not to go too deep into spoilers, but there's
Yeah.
one point where they end up having to fight like a group of 7 at once.
Oh Jesus! I thought it was always one on one.
Not always. I mean, the enemies don't always see eye to eye with the, ideals of battle.
Yeah. Fuck chivalry, right?
Yeah, and fuck the idea of the Geneva Conventions and
Yeah.
hey, look at this city of civilians. We're just gonna go right for it. Oh, that's no good.
Hmm.
It's an interesting sort of story that deals with the ideas of military secrets, spying, betrayal, even PMCs. And I think the one big thing to take away from it is the idea of like weapons deterrence, because they're using one big weapon to stave off another, or to just decommission them entirely. In that regard, a lot of the themes as I was watching the show, I feel like ran very parallel with the Metal Gear series of games. Just
Interesting.
it's because Metal Gear touches, on a lot of the same things, in particular, weapons deterrence and private military companies.
Hmm.
For what it was a fun show. It was, certainly more than I was expecting out of a light novel adaptation because, I mean, I've grown increasingly weary of those nowadays, and I try not to hedge my bets on them too heavily, maybe like one per season at the most. But yeah, I mean, Heavy Object told an interesting story that had, about, the horrors of these machines of war and the idea that, they could be taken out or even taken over at several points in the series. Machines get hijacked for better or for worse.
So it's a flawed system, basically. This war of deterrence doesn't work.
Very flawed. I mean, they even make reference at one point to this system that a lot of the machines run on and how it's apparently not as secure as they thought.
Okay.
And it can be very easily influenced from the outside.
So is the story finished? I mean, does the show have like an ending that wraps everything up, or are there more light novels to cover, or will we get another season?
I mean, there's more light novels to come, apparently, but the show wrapped up its story, I feel, in a satisfying way, but I wouldn't doubt if they try to bring it back for another season, and I'd
But
look forward to it, sure.
but there are no glaring cliffhangers at the end where like, oh, I really would have liked to see a solution or a resolution to that one.
No, I feel like it had a good end point that wasn't, like, oh, wait, so there's more
Mm.
that you're not telling us. I mean, obviously there's more that they're not telling us, but, it's not tied to what they haven't already told us.
Oh, okay, all right. Do the characters go anywhere interesting in that show? Besides, oh, hey, this episode we gonna dismantle this heavy object, and like do the I don't know, do we get any interesting reveals about the noble pilot or something, and does their backstory maybe relate to the other characters? Is there like any interesting character work that and development in that show, or is it just focused on basically the war against the other objects and the, I don't know, the political narrative?
The object pilot, Melinda, it doesn't really seem like they touched too much on her past, but, it's apparent that she's got a thing for Quenther. So, there's that between them. Havia and Froladia, though, they do drop some details about their past. Like, apparently, Froladia is very much sought after because, there's all she has all manner of suitors trying to marry her, but she just wants to do the military thing, man.
Okay.
So she ends up turning a lot, like everyone down. And at one point when she's really got her back against the wall, Quenther is like, hey, so bloody bloody blue, and he ends up making a fool out of the both of them to get this guy off her back, and it's actually a pretty great moment that shows hey, they might yell at each other a lot, but obviously they care about each other.
Cool.
And then Havia is trying to earn his inheritance of his family, and it's apparent that he's trying to marry his fiance back home, but he wants to again do the military thing for a while to prove his worth to his family.
Okay.
So they do have some interesting backstory going on there.
So how's the music in that show? I mean, it's one of our favorite topics, so why not give it a go here?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's got the same composers as Index and Railgun.
Yeah.
So, and those as far as memory serves, had really good, very high energy soundtracks, and this one delivers on the same quality of content, I feel.
Who would you recommend the show to?
I mean, I guess if you like pseudo-military stories, you might be into it. And I mean, if you liked Index and Railgun, and if you just want to see more of Kamachi's work in motion, it's worth checking out, I feel like. It's Metal Gear, but it's not.
And that is a wrap on the 7th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and animebrainfreeze.com. Leave us a comment anywhere you like, or send us an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Adios.
See you later, chuffsters.
Chusters, what the fuck?